Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted, the go-to podcast for those flipping the script and taking the unexpected path. I'm your host, Jessica Bergio, holistic life and business coach, author, speaker, and self-proclaimed high-energy hype girl. Each week, I'm bringing you inside. No gatekeeping here. I'll touch on proven holistic business strategies, powerful mindset shifts that have led my clients through massive transformations, and no BS conversation with industry leaders designed to help you get out of your own way to actively pursue a life of purpose. If you're ready to ditch the limitations at the door, hit follow and get ready to be activated to step boldly towards your big goals. Now let's dive in. Welcome back to Unscripted, the podcast. It's your girl, Jess Bergio, and I have another incredible guest on today. You guys, I love the power of social media. We get to connect with amazing humans that are doing incredible things and share their genius with you and with each other. And I know today's guest is going to just deliver some really cool stuff and share her story around this new book that she wrote and that we're going to talk about today. Katherine, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am so good. How are you today?
Amazing. I know that you are a marketing strategist and now a best-selling
Mhm.
author. Can you talk to us about the process of writing this book and why this is such an important thing for you to get out into the world and have this conversation?
Absolutely. So, the book is called Calling It Off, Memoir of an Almost Bride. And if you can't tell from the title, it chronicles the period of my life where I got engaged to the wrong person. The process of coming to know that it was the wrong choice for me, and then calling off my wedding 2 weeks before I was supposed to get married. And then also the healing, the uncoupling, and the growth that occurred after and really led me through kind of the next phase of dating until I ultimately, had a good outcome in the end. But the process of the book was really, it started when this all happened. So the day after I called off the wedding, I was obviously a complete and total disaster. It was what I wanted, but it's still heartbreaking. Um, and there's still a lot of grief to process, even if you're the one walking away from a relationship. And I just was Googling, how do you call off a wedding? What do you do when you call it off? Like, what are resources? Where's the conversation? Where can I feel seen? And I didn't find anything.
I was gonna say, what rabbit hole did that lead you down?
I mean, there was some random Reddit threads. There was an article from the Knot, which is like the wedding planning mecca.
Interesting.
Um, but there really wasn't a ton, and I didn't know anybody who had been through it at the time. Coming back later, I find out a lot of people had. We just don't talk about it.
Okay.
And so that's where it came from. I wanted to have this conversation. I wanted to be the resource I wish I had had and just open it up and share one woman's honest perspective of what it's like to go through this season and ultimately the hope um, and the growth and the evolution that's on the other side. So
Yeah.
that's the whole purpose.
Well, and you talk about too, like it's the perfectionism that we put out
Mm,
as this like front version, especially as women,
mhm,
to keep it all together, to make shit happen, to like figure it out as we go. And like this whole process that I've even at times convinced myself of like, I can make anything work. Come on, Jessica, like you can do this. Like you're strong. Everybody sees you as so strong. Like you can make anything work. Like but at the time, I wish I would have left my engagement before I got married in my early 20s, and when you and I
mhm,
connected, I was like, "Oh, this is specific," and I think
mhm,
there's parts of me that still haven't fully forgiven myself for
mm.
getting married to the person and then having to go through the painful separation and divorce, feeling like now I have divorce on my title as if anyone gives a fuck, and then also, like, moving into the next season of being scared of trusting myself to make the next right decision when it comes to such a big choice in your life.
I think that self-trust piece is really interesting because not trusting myself led me down that path for as long as it did. We were engaged for 11 and a half months. We had planned the entire wedding. Um, and I had obviously had feelings of doubt. I had seen the red flags. I wasn't showing up as a very good version of me either, which I think is really important to admit of like, it wasn't looking good all around.
Yeah.
And it took me a really long time to trust that knowing, to trust my gut, to let go of the perfectionism and just say, no, this is actually what I want. But then after one of the, I think, hardest but best choices I've ever made, the ability to trust myself has only grown from such a big choice to now I really trust myself so much more in all the smaller choices as well. And so, I don't recommend going through the fire in that way, but there's a silver lining to it. And you ultimately did make that choice for you. I mean, coming back to your story too, you did make that choice at some point. And so you build on that trust. You can't second guess what happened in the past. I think you learned and grew through that in the same way that I had to grow through saying yes and presenting this, ultimately a facade of a perfect relationship and looked perfect on Instagram and
Oh
isn't this
yeah.
a beautiful wedding? And, you know, trying to fit the mold in a way that wasn't really authentic.
I've gone through that now in this newer relationship that I'm in. We've been dating for 4 years. We got engaged about 6 months ago, and I felt the self-sabotage starting to happen
Mm,
after we got engaged, because of the massive, like, weight I put on the title of marriage because I do want it to have so much meaning, but then also I don't have a good track record, of or proof that I'm good at
mhm,
that or that I'm gonna be able to make that work, and so it's interesting now being 44, him being 55, like, where I see myself in the relationship and what I kind of find myself doing and second guessing certain things, whereas if you would have asked a prior version of me, I'm like, "Oh, I
mm,
definitely have that self-trust built up. I do know what I want." But it's funny when you're confronted with things that you think you've moved through, how, like, this next level of, again, I guess perfectionism or making sure you get it right, I'm throwing up air quotes,
mhm.
and,
Yeah.
like, how do I ultimately know what it is that I want or where I'm supposed to be?
I I mean, for me, I feel it a lot in the body, right? I think the body knows. Especially as, somebody who moves a lot and is very into their movement practice, I think you just become in tuned with how that feels, and it's different for every person. But for me, that is one of my key check-ins. And also like the perfectionism is really hard. Um, The thing I try to remember when stepping away from that is to release comparison, because I think perfectionism is so intimately tied to comparing yourself to others, to comparing yourself to an idealized version of you or a version of you that you think you should be, the version that's getting it right. And you have to release that comparison. It is comparison will rob you of the happiness and will cause the self-sabotage. And so
Truly.
learning to step away from that in some ways feels easier than trying to battle perfectionism. Because by trying to battle perfectionism, we're trying to be perfect at not being perfect. So I think just releasing the comparison altogether um, has helped me to find it more approachable and be
Totally.
more fallible, openly human.
And to accept that you're not always gonna feel so tapped in and so, you know, in this love bubble. I think that's also what we've been preconceived to believe, that once you find your soulmate or your person or your
Mhm,
partner, that everything will be easier afterwards. And in fact, that's when the real work starts because at some point we're only responsible for ourselves. And then generally there's a partner. And then oftentimes there's children. And so, you kind of lose the choice to always be choosing what you ultimately want in that moment. And
mhm,
it depends on who's around you and what other people need. And then if you're in a service-based business or even any sort of space where you're giving any of yourself, it's it's confusing at times because if we're meant to tune in and tap into what we feel intuitively, we still have to get shit done, and we still have to show up in certain ways, and we still have to be there for people, but I think you're right, taking out the perfectionism of how it has to look and or for me, how it has to feel. Sometimes things just need to get done, and I need to be able to show up as the person my partner needs, even if I'm having an off day, and I think that's where that give and take and the beautiful partnership that is a relationship comes into play of sometimes it's gonna be opposite, and I'm gonna need him to do that.
mhm,
He's gonna have to push through hard days and be there for me, and I think for me, like, finding what it means to have, like, a sacred marriage and have, like, a partnership, it doesn't mean it's gonna be perfect, and I think that we find that to be true with a lot of things that we choose in life. "Oh, this career I thought was gonna feel like this," or "this person," or "this
mhm,
place," or whatever that looks like, and knowing, like you said, there's ebbs and flows and there's ups and downs with everything, but intuitively, when I look back on that first marriage, I was like, sick to my stomach walking down the aisle. I remember feeling like I was gonna throw up, and I was like, "Oh, this is just when I'm just nervous." And I'm like, "Well, why would I
Mm.
be nervous? I've been with this person for 4 years. Why do I feel like this?" And I'm like, "'Cause you're not supposed to be doing it."
There is such a difference between, I think, a normal cold feet, normal anxiety for being the center of attention in
Sure.
front of however many people, even if it's 10. That is such a different feeling, right? Than, and you've experienced it, than this deep knowing of, oh, this is a big no, like a big no, and I need to pay attention to that.
Yeah,
But also the communication around it. Like as you move forward, I think even, talking about you and your husband, as you show up differently for each other, my husband and I are the same. We have to be able to communicate around it though. Not, being vulnerable enough to admit that you're not at that perfect place, that you need the support, that you're going to show up anyway, may not be the best, but like you're trying. I think the communication around that is so key, but you have to be open and vulnerable in those spaces.
absolutely. Okay, so you have some tools for people to help with self-reflection and to kinda tap
Mhm.
into, like, where they're at. Can you share what that looks like with us?
Sure. So, I mean, first off, you can always, pop on to my website, katherinerosewoller.com, and download the PDF of it. That will be up there. But one of the pieces is that body journal, so to speak. Like people keep a food diary. I really think that you can keep a body diary and start to understand when those triggers are happening, when those doubts are happening, what are those feelings for you? And really start to look at the patterns. I know we've already talked about that a bit. One other piece for me that I think is really impactful, and a question I ask myself whenever there's a big crossroads, whenever I have a big decision, is making a small decision. So if I had to pick today, what percentage of me would call off my wedding? What percentage of me would want to still get married? It's a question I asked myself throughout that entire process. And the numbers waffled. And it wasn't about, if it was 95% married or 5% not married. It wasn't the number, it was forcing myself to make really small choices and really small commitments to kinda try on what that was feeling like and remove some of the subjective piece of it. I needed to practice making those choices in a really non-committal way before I could ultimately, like, commit to the choice for me. I needed to build that trust muscle of myself and to build that practice. So that is one of the biggest pieces I still use in terms of like, what percentage of you would want to make a career change and what percentage of you would stay where you are? I mean, I think it's universally applicable. And it's that trying it on that for some reason in my brain in particular really clicked and allowed me to just step through the fear, um, and start being a little more proactive in my own life.
I love it. So many good takeaways. I know that anyone listening is probably relating, even if they've never wanted to call off a wedding, because I feel like the book's gonna speak to so much more than that. So we dive
Hmm.
into, like, some takeaways? Like,
Yeah.
this isn't for anyone who's just, like, literally engaged wanting to run away right now. I know that you don't write a
No.
book this size with only one main character in mind. So who is this book for? What woman is this? Is it for a woman in particular?
I would say my voice, is very conversational. It feels like you're talking to a friend, in particular, probably a girlfriend. So, yes, the majority of readers are likely women. That being said, it's not just for someone who's having doubts in a relationship, doubts about a marriage. I mean, it can be doubts in where you're living, doubts in your career, difficult family relationships, and wanting to set boundaries there. It focuses on that process of coming to honor what I knew, have the courage to make a big choice, and then the processing and grief after. So it's not specific to a wedding, but it speaks to, how my relationships with others changed, how my relationship with myself changed, what I ultimately grew into. And yes, it does go into the next dating phases, which, is a little bit lighter piece of the book, but it really illustrates that I had to then repeatedly listen to what I needed and wanted and make a much more rapid no, in order to get to my, ultimate yes with
And
my now husband.
yes, and to not put yourself in those situations in the
Mhm.
future of trusting yourself before it's too late to kind of hit the reset button. But I had a guest on the show that said, "I didn't need permission to start my business. and I don't need permission to like let my business go. And I find
Mhm.
that we constantly seek permission from other people of like big decisions in our life like this, like having conversations with everybody you know about the shit that you're in, right? Like say you're in a relationship and you just want to talk about it all the time and you need your friend Susan to just be like, you just need to leave. You need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's funny because as I was telling you earlier and sharing, obviously I'm pretty vulnerable on my podcast, like this self-sabotage that I could feel coming through once we got engaged. I reached out to a trusted person and I shared some deep things that were going on internally and kind of an argument that we had had. And, she was very quick to label things as like toxic or this is not working and this and that. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm discerning enough to know like she doesn't know the whole story. She's only hearing my complaining and my version right now because I'm upset. And I let some time and space go. And then I actually circled back because I wanted to let her know like things had kind of like shifted and that we had had some really good conversations and that we were feeling better about the situation. And she was pretty supportive then. And then I hit another road bump and I remember she just came at me pretty hard and she's like, this isn't working. This isn't where you should be. Like, very. And it was interesting because I feel like I almost needed somebody to say that for me to be like, that's
Mm.
actually not true. So
Mhm.
if I'm projecting that energy, that's on me. And if she's come to that conclusion based off what I shared, like, what was I saying that wasn't true? And how was I looking for validation for the thing in the moment, I wanted someone to validate my feelings and to tell me I was right and to tell me my side of the fight was the correct one, you know? We're so gifted in finding the answers we want. Like, if you wanna believe something and you
Mhm.
wanna find support around it, you know which friend to go talk to. If you want the opposite, you know which friend to go talk to. There's proof around whichever way you want to find the answers. And so I think having books like this that give you a discernment on how to like tap into your own knowingness is literally the most powerful thing we can do because as women we have such strong intuitions, but we're so quick to just shop them out to other people of like, I need to go to a psychic or I need to talk to a therapist because I don't know how to think my own thoughts or to believe what it is I'm feeling in my body because I don't trust myself enough.
I mean, I did both. Like, I actually
Everybody does.
like so I did both and took it all with a grain of salt, and
Totally.
ultimately, neither one I mean, especially the psychic, did not move the needle. It was more of like
So I
a
should cancel that appointment next week. No.
I mean, I still do it.
I
I
love that
enjoy
shit.
it. But it also was more of like, "Yeah, Catherine, you already know this." And
Yeah,
it was that validation moment too, I guess, which could have gone either way. Um, but yeah, I mean, I did both. And ultimately, it came down to me. I was the only one that had the power to make the choice, and I was the only one that should have the power to make the
totally.
choice.
Well, let's speak to the relationship girlies who are maybe going through a season right now
Yeah.
where they're having a hard time finding their person. Were there any things that you set yourself up to be able to tap into or kind of create like I'm manifesting my dream partner. I know exactly what I
Mhm.
want now because I was in a situation where I realized what I don't want. Like, how did you then have so much success in finding your actual now life partner?
Yeah, so there were a lot of lessons learned from my ex-fiance, and I think when we first, broke it off, I admittedly probably jumped back in the dating pool a little too quickly and wasn't fully healed. Things were more wound than scar, shall we say. And, I still had kind of some of those key pieces of I wanted super supportive, you know, unbelievably kind, curious, culturally curious, driven, travel oriented. Um, and I interestingly found in pretty quick succession three different relationships that had like one of those kind of key pillars, but maybe even in a way that was almost a negative. Like number one was unbelievably driven and unbelievably intense, and it was kind of an intensity that I didn't want to revisit. You know, the second was, funny and outgoing and creative, and we lacked a little bit of grounding stability. And I was like, okay, so here's the middle ground there. And then the third was, spoiled me rotten as was unbelievably cultured and incredibly intelligent, but again, just there were some small nuanced pieces, and I really kind of viewed them each as a test. Like I had to say, still not good enough, still not good enough, still not good enough in quick succession. Like this was 5 months of these like back to back, looked great, got into it, felt it was off, as I called it off, confirmed it was off. And then ultimately, I met my now husband the day I graduated with my MBA. Like I felt so proud of where I was. I felt so completely in love with the life I was building. Like I was done caring. And it was the day that I met him. Right. And so I think just being really clear on those no's let me then understand that when I saw a yes, I could recognize it. Like I was trusting myself to recognize that yes, finally. But it took practice and failure. So keep going through it. Get your no's, and then also trust yourself when it's a yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You guys, and go check out this book, Calling It Off. It's so cute. I love the stories in it. I love how you story tell and the way that you share and are so vulnerable with everything. You guys, I love a good book, and it's hot pink, and it's gonna look so cute on your shelf too, by the way.
Yes.
I want to touch quickly too on the book writing process, if you don't mind, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of people I know who are interested in writing books. What was that
hmm
like for you to write this book?
I mean, it's a journey in and of itself. Nothing. It is transformative, right? The process, like what happened in the book, was transformative, and writing the book is transformative because you have to do it from a healed place. You have to do it with grace for the you then, with grace for everybody else involved in your story then, if it's a personal story, right? And you have to be really, really confident in your knowing your voice and not trying to sound like anybody else. And, my book is conversational. It's not, you know, hyper academic, and that doesn't make it less than. And so I really had to embrace that and know that my story was going to connect best with vulnerability in a digestible format,
Mhm.
and then stick to my guns on it. But it's a long process, and it'll really crack you open, but kind of in the coolest way possible,
Super. Highly recommend. I know it was a process for me too, and I can't wait to dive
right?
into it again. It's one of those things that I think I talk about starting a podcast being transformational and, getting to process your feelings, whether it's verbally, like through a podcast, right? If you've done several episodes, you literally have a book already. You've talked a book.
hmm
But then the process of sharing your story and creating like something relatable to somebody else as you write the book is also transformational personally. And I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of us do the things we do. Yes, it's to help other people, but it's also to help and heal ourselves. And you know that if you share your story in the process, it's going to be impactful. So thank you so much for creating this safe place for people to have these harder conversations that you couldn't find when you needed them. And it's usually
hmm
why we create the things we do, right? You had a pain point, you couldn't find the help that you possibly needed, and now you've gone through the process and you can turn around and help other people work through making hard decisions and trusting themselves a little bit more, like
hmm
you said, with any big decisions. So where can we find the book? Where can people support you and learn more and get into your world?
Yeah, the book is available on Amazon and then also online through any of your favorite local indies. Just go search their online database. You can order it right there. You can find me at katherinerosewaller.com. Fun stuff through the newsletter. There's also the download on your 3 reflection questions for when you're at a crossroads. And then
Mm,
the only social media I use is Instagram because I just cannot manage more than one.
fair.
And that's at Katherine Waller.
Amazing. You guys go check out her content, grab the book if this is something that speaks to your soul, or if there's someone in your life you could gift this book to. I feel like that's a really powerful way
Mhm.
to connect with people in your life is by gifting them books. We were just talking about the beautiful bookshelf behind her in studio. And I was like, that is like my dream is just to have all of the words on paper. I love a good, like, real book. But for those of you who like audiobook, can they listen to this on audio?
I am currently recording the
Good for
audiobook
you.
actually
Good
this
girl.
week
Yeah.
and next week. So that will be out this summer. So if you
Amazing.
want to wait for that, by all means, I will be in your ears telling you the story myself.
I love it. If you guys got any good takeaways today for today's episode, please share with us on social media. We love a good dose of validation over here on the Unscripted podcast. And if you need anything from us, let us know. I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next episode of Unscripted. Giving back is easy. Leave Unscripted your 5-star rating and written review. I appreciate your support more than I could ever put into words.